into all 53 games. Let's begin with the weeknight. Thursday night, Army heads over to East Carolina to take on the Pirates. East Carolina is favored by 5 points. That has dropped down from 6 earlier in the week. But we're going to go Black Knights. They have been improving. I think they're going to continue to improve throughout here in 2025. I know they lost to Tarleton State in the beginning of the year. But East Carolina, not the best team. I think they're going to have some trouble again against this Army offense. It's a little bit unusual of a team that they have actually played. Even though they have been pretty decent in stopping the run, we don't think they're going to be stopping the Black Knights on the ground there on Thursday night. Moving over to some Friday games, beginning with Florida State at Virginia. Kind of talked about this in the rank section. We're going to go Florida State. They're minus 7.5 point favorites. And on top of that, Virginia knows how to blow games. So let's keep moving to TCU at Arizona State. This is kind of like one of those ones that should have been bigger than what it is, especially with TCU already being undefeated this season. They had a nice win against SMU. It's kind of like their only quality win so far. But unfortunately, Arizona State dropped that game in Starkville, but got the job done against Baylor last week on the road there in Waco. Arizona State minus 2.5 point favorites. It's kind of understandable why that's so close. TCU is undefeated. They have a nice offensive combo. And their quarterback Hoover connecting to former Boise State Bronco McAllister. But we're still going to go Sun Devils. I think they, again, know how to position themselves to win games. If they get up early, this is definitely going to be all Sun Devils and forcing TCU into making mistakes. So again, let's go Arizona State. They're at home. And that's another thing to also bring up. Arizona State hasn't lost a home game in a while. They defended their home turf last season pretty well. Then in 2023, I think it was towards the end of the season when they were not losing there at home. But keep on moving. We got Houston taking on Oregon State there. We're going with the Cougars, favored by 13 points. Oregon State hasn't won any of their games, and well, Houston's undefeated. So yeah, there's a reason why we're going with Houston. It would kind of make a lot of sense if we would, pick the undefeated team versus the non-undefeated team. But if you're a fan of any of these teams, hit that thumbs up button. Let us know who you are supporting also there in the comments. As we keep moving to the morning games here on Saturday. And don't forget, we will have a morning show over on YT of doing all of the 13 games in the early kickoff slot. And the main game will be Notre Dame there in Fayetteville against Arkansas. But for Georgia Tech, Wake Forest, kind of already talked about that again. We're going with the Yellow Jackets as we keep moving to another one we already have discussed. That's USC at Illinois. They're in Champaign. We're taking the home team. Again, USC doesn't have the best track record already in the Big Ten against non-West Coast Big Ten teams. And we'll think they'll go back to that trend here this upcoming weekend. As the Fighting Illini, we're expecting to have a nice bounce back win against a undefeated Trojan team. Notre Dame, Arkansas. We're going to take the Fighting Irish. They were minus 5.5 point favorites to begin the week. That has now dropped down to 4. I think that makes a little bit of sense because Notre Dame really has only beaten Purdue. That game was pretty close before that weather delay in terms of the scoreline. Then Notre Dame obviously pulled away against the Boilermakers there in South Bend. They're back into SEC country. They did win there in College Station last year against Texas A&M, but there's a lot of missing pieces from that 2024 team that has moved on. And yeah, we should expect this game to be pretty close. I'm a little hesitant to pick Notre Dame because Arkansas could definitely do it. But at the end of the day, we think the Razorbacks are going to make too many mistakes. And that's why we're going Notre Dame. Rutgers versus Minnesota. Another Big Ten conference game to talk about. Golden Gophers favored by 4.5. The week started them at 5.5. But we're going Rutgers. There's just something there, we think. We don't like Callie McManus, but he comes up against his former program in the Minnesota Golden Gophers. And it's also on the road. So going up against that former crowd that he used to play in front of, he definitely would want to get the win there. And I think he kind of came up a little bit short last week against Iowa, a very physical team. Minnesota already lost to Cal on the road. That was a little surprising, to be quite honest with you. But again, we're going to go Rutgers, going against the grain there, just like the USC-Illinois game. We got Duke heading over to Syracuse to play in that cool little dome. The Orange had that, I think maybe it's considered a generational win against Clemson last week. But Clemson's pretty bad here in 2025. Duke is favored by 5.5 points. I think the reasoning for that is Steve Angeli, the Orange QB1 going into the season, is out for the remainder of the season. And that's why we're also going Blue Devils. They had a nice win last week against North Carolina State. They'll continue that winning form here against Syracuse and I believe handing the Orange their first L in ACC play there. Louisville heads up to Pittsburgh to take on the Panthers. Nice win against Bowling Green at home for the Cardinals. Pittsburgh, they had a nice bye, so they kind of are refreshing themselves after the backyard brawl that they lost to West Virginia. That is one of the many reasons why we're picking Louisville. We like the Cardinals. I don't think this win is going to put them into the top 25, but it'll help us make a case of why they should be a ranked team eventually. Louisville is favored by 4.5 points. That has actually risen from the beginning of the week. They started off the line at 3, which I thought was a little, again, disrespectful for Louisville. They're a hell of a lot better than that, but it is Pittsburgh. They show up to games sometimes, especially there at home in the beginning, but then tend to fall apart. And we expect them to fall apart and maybe see Louisville cover that number here on Wednesday that was set at. Cincinnati heads over to Lawrence to take on Kansas. The Jayhawks favored by 5.5. That has dropped to 6.5 from the beginning of the week. Pretty interesting because Kansas just blew out West Virginia. You would think they'd be on a little bit of a high. Maybe there's something I'm missing there that I haven't seen yet. I'm still going to go with the Jayhawks. Jalen Daniels has been on fire. Had a nice win in that blowout against the Mountaineers at home. I don't know if it's going to be a blowout, but definitely a nice close game. Maybe their first close game since the loss there on the road to Missouri in the Border War. Cincinnati has pretty good quarterback in Shoresby. Some decent weapons around him as well. Should make it a close contest. So that 5.5 point drop, or the drop to 5.5 points, kind of makes a little sense there. UCF heads over to Manhattan to take on Kansas State. This was a very interesting line because UCF, well, they're undefeated. They just beat North Carolina in some pretty good fashion there. And again, they're undefeated. Kansas State has already lost quite a few games. They had that quote-unquote upset to Army earlier in the season where they just were not playing good football against the Black Knights. Almost lost to North Dakota at home. But I think the form and the trend we're going to be going with is that the teams that lose in Dublin, Ireland in week 1 usually have a terrible season. So that's where we're going UCF. We're going against the grain. Give us the Knights on the road. As again, Kansas State favored by 6.5. That's pretty interesting. Pretty interesting. But again, we're going UCF. South Alabama, obviously, we move over to this column. Again, almost to the bottom row. They will be playing North Texas. The Mean Green, if I'm not mistaken, have a perfect record. As they're going through some pretty decent teams, at least for a North Texas standard. We're going to go again with the Mean Green here. South Alabama disappointed us last week against Coastal Carolina. And they won't give us that chance again here, as North Texas should be blowing out the Jags. As we keep moving, we have Bowling Green heading over to, I believe, Oxford, Ohio. Or it might not be Oxford, Ohio. It's a place in Ohio, and that is where the Bobcats play. The Ohio Bobcats are our favorite to win the MAC. They're going to prove it this upcoming weekend against Bowling Green. Bowling Green, they're all right. They're okay. They're definitely not going to beat Ohio, who's already played some quality opponents. Got them a little bit better, tuned up for that West Virginia game that they won at home. They'll continue to win at home against the Falcons. Utah State heads down to Nashville for the first time. Take on Vanderbilt. We're taking the Commodores. We talked a little bit about it there in the rank section. As we move into one of my favorite games to talk about here on the show when it annually happens, and that's Eastern Michigan taking on Central Michigan on that far right column, almost to the bottom row. Why do I say that? Because I love me some MAC Nation football. And Eastern Michigan, when they come up against Central Michigan or Western Michigan in the mix, it's just a fun game to tune into if I have the chance. And it'll be part of this morning lineup. And I'll actually get to watch the game a little bit live there. Minus 5.5 points for the Chippewas. That makes a lot of sense. They have some decent wins, some not so decent losses too as well. It's the 103rd meeting between the two. That's also a cool little thing to add to that. Again, we're going Chippewas. We were going to go Chippewas even before we saw that line. Central Michigan just has a little bit over their fellow in-state foes when they come up against each other. Georgia Southern heads down to, was it Harrisburg, Virginia, to take on James Madison. That is a final game. They're in the middle at the bottom. Georgia Southern, well, they kind of pissed us off a couple weeks ago when they proved us wrong. They won't be doing that this weekend. The Dukes, minus 17-point favorites. That's pretty interesting. I think they also did business against the Eagles last time they came to town there in Harrisburg. I think they'll be doing the business again. But minus 17 points, I don't know if they're going to actually cover that. So that's a pretty interesting thing to look at there. Before we move on, if you're a fan of any of these programs, hit that thumbs up button and let us know who you are a fan of as we keep moving to the next slide. These are the noon games or early afternoon games, depending on where you are in the country. We start with Arkansas State heading down to UL Monroe. The Warhawks are favored by 2.5 points. Pretty close line so far there. Arkansas State, well, they didn't get the job done against Kennesaw State last week. That was on the road. And we also believe they're going back on the road and losing to UL Monroe, who have also proved us wrong. So it's kind of like a mixture of that. And let's go Warhawks. Ohio State, Washington, they're in Seattle. We talked a little bit about that game. We're going Buckeyes. I think they're going to be able to more than cover, as they're favored by 8 points at the moment. So again, a little disrespectful to the number one team there in the country. Got to give them some more respect. LSU heads down to Oxford, Mississippi. We've now talked about this game 2 times on the stream. Now going to the third. If you want the in-depth preview, we have it there in the beginning of the stream, or check us out over on YT with the clips. We're going Rebels. They're favored by 1.5. That has dropped down from 2.5 from the beginning of the week for the 114th Magnolia Bowl. Ole Miss has been able to defend their home turf against LSU the last 2 meetings as well, so that's another reason why we're going with the Rebels. Texas A&M takes on Auburn. They're at home in College Station. 12th man, we're going to be making a lot of noise for when the Tigers come into town. We're going to go Aggies, 6.5 point favorites. Let's keep moving to Indiana to head over to Iowa City to take on the Hawkeyes. 7.5 point favorites. Makes a lot of sense. Indiana has a great offense, great defense, and even the special teams pretty great as well. Maybe even better than the Hawkeyes special teams. But yeah, let's go Hoosiers there. As we move now to UCLA heading over to Northwestern. Ooh-wee. This is an interesting matchup. The Wildcats are favored by 6.5 points. The last time these two met was in a Sun Bowl back in 2005, where UCLA won 50-38. That will have nothing to do with this game. The more bigger question, will UCLA actually win a game? The Bruins, so far, nothing there in the win column. This is kind of their only chance. Maybe they'll have one later down the line if they somewhat improve. Obviously, this is the first weekend without Deshaun Foster as a head coach. Are the players going to be able to turn it around? Probably not. That's why we're also going Northwestern. But the Wildcats not been impressive themselves here in 2025. So it's a little, again, of an interesting game to pick. Let's go Wildcats. Cal heads over to Boston College. West Coast to East Coast game there. We're going to go with the Eagles. Cal, a little exposed there last week, but I think maybe that was because they were just not getting the job done. I might be regretting not picking the Berkeley Bears here, as I think it was a little bit, I don't want to say a fluke loss, but just a game where they just couldn't get the job done in the red zone. They were missing field goals, and they're just making a lot of mistakes. A lot of mistakes against the San Diego State Aztecs. Here, we think that's going to trend that way. Bill O'Brien has to be seeing something there in that game last week in San Diego, and why the Eagles will be coming up on top. They are 6.5 point favorites as well. Baylor heads down to Stillwater, Oklahoma to take on the Cowboys of Oklahoma State. As this past week, the Pokes lost to Tulsa. They're at home. That resulted in yesterday's news of Mike Gundy being, unfortunately, somewhat fired. It was labeled as parting ways. And they will be parting ways with a win here. They will not be anywhere ready to take on anybody anytime soon, because they have just been awful. Just awful. Can't score points. They won't be scoring many points here against the Waco Bears. Baylor is favored by 20.5 points going into this game. They're in Stillwater. That's kind of insane. Because Oklahoma State, historically, again, the last 20 years, especially under Gundy, have been very competitive. And it's going to take a lot to turn that program around. Just not going to happen anytime soon. That's why we're going Baylor. Let's keep moving as Utah heads over to Morgantown. We talked a little bit about that in the top 25 section. We're going Utes to bounce back after the tough loss at home to Texas Tech. They are 12.5 point favorites. And that's another good reason to go with Utah there. UConn versus Buffalo. This is one of those trap games for us on the channel. UConn bad, Buffalo, they're all right for a MAC team, but overall in the country, bad. Minus 4.5 point favorites are the Huskies on the road here. That has risen to an original 3-point line in the beginning of the week. So that just gives me a lot of just like caution. It would be nice to go with Buffalo. I don't think they're going to get the job done. I think UConn, they've just been in some tough games, not getting the job done. They've been in overtime twice and have lost to Delaware and Syracuse. I mean, they should have beat Syracuse. And that's kind of also why we're going with them over Buffalo. They don't got to travel too far as well. So let's go with UConn. We have San Diego State on the road. They're against Northwestern Illinois. These two would have been Mountain West Conference foes, but again, the Aztecs, they'll be moving over to the new Pac-12. Northern Illinois, if I'm not mistaken, if it's not starting next year, it'll be the year after. They'll be leaving the MAC and be playing in the Mountain West, which is pretty crazy. The Aztecs are favored by 2.5 points. Last week, Northern Illinois went down to Starkville, got blown out by the Bulldogs. Haven't been putting up much of a fight so far this past season. I think they lost a lot in the transfer portal. So that kind of makes a lot of sense. San Diego State, they've been playing all right. I mean, they had a very, very nice win against a undefeated Cal. But again, I'm not too sure if that was a fluke win because of the way Cal played and not getting the job done. We think they're going to get the job done here on the road, though. So let's go San Diego State over Northern Illinois. Rice heads down to Annapolis, Maryland, to take on the midshipmen of Navy. We're going Navy. They like blowing out teams. I like watching Navy blow out teams. I don't know if it's going to be a blowout. Rice did do a decent enough job on a weeknight against Charlotte last week. But Navy did have the bye, so that extra time, the extra day that they got won't, I don't think, matter as much. And usually Navy on top of it lately. So let's go with the midshipmen over the Owls there. Akron heads over to Toledo to take on the Rockets. Yeah, Toledo today, Toledo tomorrow, Toledo forever. Rough loss to Western Michigan. I think that was also at home, but this is the Zips. Different story, different MAC team there. They definitely want to bounce back and trying to get to that game in Detroit to compete for a MAC title. This is where it starts for them. They'll be winning. And then on top of that, they are minus 21 point favorites. The line started at 20.5. Believe it or not, I think they can cover that because, again, Akron, not a good team whatsoever. We keep moving. That is Lindenwood with that pretty cool Detroit Lions looking logo. They'll be heading over to this. I think this is a correct Ohio, Oxford, Ohio, because Updog Sports Talk, one of our homies, actually attended that game last week against UNLV. But for this game against Lindenwood, Miami of Ohio, so far a rough start here in 2025. Not a win, I believe, to have so far. They'll be getting their first win against an FCS team, and then start to build momentum there when MAC play starts. So let's go Redhawks. New Mexico State versus New Mexico. The Rio Grande rivalry. It's the 115th meeting between the two. Aggies, Lobos. It's going to be a good one here this upcoming weekend. We're going to go with New Mexico. Minus 14 point favorites. That was a little bit of an eyebrow raiser. I know they beat UCLA, but this is a rivalry game. I would expect New Mexico State to keep it close. The Aggies beat Tulsa earlier this season. Tulsa beat Oklahoma State. Oklahoma State is pretty bad, but that's just a thing you got to look out for. Either team should be again making it a game about. Yeah, we're gonna go Lobos. I don't know about 2 possessions, especially 14 points, maybe 10. So maybe we're thinking also that they don't cover there in Albuquerque. As we continue now to that bottom row, Tulane versus Tulsa. Well, both teams had an interesting week last week. Tulane got completely obliterated against Ole Miss. Tulsa, on the other hand, had a nice big win in Stillwater, and then kind of putting the nail in the coffin in Mike Gundy, ending an era there. Sengus tied for second longest tenured head coach going into 2025. I can barely get that out. Anyways, Tulane minus 14-point favorites there against the Golden Hurricanes. Retzlaff should be bouncing back with his offense. On top of that, the defense shouldn't be allowing a lot of points. Yeah, let's go Tulane Green Waves all the way. Hawaii heads over to the Air Force Academy to take on the Falcons. Rainbow Warriors came up short against Fresno State. If you stayed up for that game last week, very good one. Very, very good contest. They were driving, got almost that game tying again drive, but came up short with a 2-point conversion. And ultimately, yeah, lost the game against their rival, Fresno State. Air Force, also a tough week. They had Boise State come to town on the Broncos, with Dylan Riley having 5 touchdowns against the Falcons. Just outscored Air Force there. Here, we think Air Force will be winning. They are favored by 6.5 points. That line has moved up from 6. You know, I really like Mike Alejandro, the quarterback for the Rainbow Warriors. But like the consistency there, I think because of the injury, maybe has lost some confidence. And that's kind of also why we're not going with Hawaii. Can't be losing to Fresno State if you are wanting to be a good Mountain West team. So let's go Air Force. The final game on the slide is Tennessee heading down to Starkville. 1 loss between the two combined, which is pretty surprising. You wouldn't expect that from Mississippi State, but they are playing some good football. But we're ultimately going with number 17 Tennessee. Should be getting the dub there. They're favored by 7.5 points. As we're going to continue to move on. If any of these teams are your team, hit that thumbs up button. Let us know which one it is down there in the comments as we get into the next slide. The afternoon games, or maybe early afternoon games, maybe where we should consider that time slot. And it also depends on where you are there in the country. So it might just be afternoon. Middle Tennessee State heads down to Kennesaw State. There for some CUSA action. The Owls won at home against Arkansas State last week. We're thinking they're going to continue that home winning streak that they currently have against the Raiders. Initially started at a 9-point line in favor for the Owls. That has dropped down to 7.5 points for Kennesaw State. And yeah, we're going to pick them this week, this time around. Middle Tennessee State, not a very good team. They lost to Austin P, an FCS team. A decent performance against Wisconsin, but Wisconsin might be really, really bad. So yeah, let's go Kennesaw State. Old Dominion hosting Liberty. The Flames playing an interesting non-conference schedule. A lot of Sunbelt teams that they come up against. And I thought this line was pretty interesting. Minus 16-point favorites for the Monarchs. Liberty, again, though, hasn't been themselves, especially from the last 2 seasons. Kind of gone away from that form. Lost a lot, not only to the transfer portal, but from graduation. So yeah, it makes a lot of sense of why Old Dominion is favored. They are a solid team. I think that loss to Indiana makes them a little bit more of a force there in the Sun Belt in what you should expect from the Monarchs. And they've been winning games and proving us right. They're going to continue to prove us right as they beat that Conference USA team coming to town. Let's go Old Dominion. Rhode Island. Yeah, that's what that Ram logo represents. Comes over to Western Michigan. And I think this might be the last week where we'll see any FCS team play an FBS opponent for quite a while. Regardless, we're going to go with the Broncos against Rhode Island, even though I really love those helmets. But the helmet doesn't win games, it's the players. So let's go again, Western Michigan, who got a big win against Toledo last week. Arizona heads over to Ames, Iowa, take on the Cyclones. Let's go Cyclones. They are a very competitive team. The line, I believe, moved down to 6 from the original 6.5 point favorites for the home team. Again, it's the first time they are playing each other since 1968. Wonder what the records of the two programs were in 1968. I should have looked that up. 2025 version, they're both undefeated. But with all that said, we're still going to go with Iowa State handing the Arizona Wildcats their first L. They are not bearing down their names, unfortunately. Virginia Tech heads down to Raleigh, North Carolina to take on the NC State Wolfpack. First week, I believe. Second week. Last week against Wolford. Without their head coach starting the beginning of the 2025 season. And Brent Pry, he has been fired. Got their first win of the season. I don't think they're going to get their second here against NC State. This is one I'll be very disappointed to see if the Hokies get the job done, to be quite honest with you. Minus 10.5 point favorites for the Wolfpack. I actually think they have a good chance of covering that because of how bad Virginia Tech has been so far this season. As we keep moving, we got Jacksonville State. Southern Miss. The Golden Eagles favored by minus 4 points, originally set at minus 3.5. We're actually going to go with the Gamecocks. We did it earlier this season when Liberty was favored. And we're going to do it again, and I think we're going to be proven right. Southern Miss, a very disappointing loss last week to Louisiana Tech. And I think they're going to drop another game to a CUSA program, and that'll be the Gamecocks. Western Kentucky. Some more Conference USA action here. Heads over to Missouri State. They'll be welcoming the new boys here to the FBS with a nice big L handed there to them in their record column. Western Kentucky, pretty solid. They had a nice performance against Nevada last week. It's kind of truly when the Hilltoppers go up against a really good team is when they tend to lose. But when they come up against weaker programs, they tend also to get the job done. So let's go Hilltoppers. They're favored by 5 points. I think they should be able to more than cover this upcoming weekend. The final game on the slide is Memphis heading down to Florida Atlantic. We're going with the Tigers. Big win last week against Arkansas. Undefeated. Also, FAU lost to FIU earlier this season, who is not a very good program. So let's go with Memphis there on the road in Florida. And before we move on from the slide, if you are a fan of any of these programs, hit that thumbs up button. Let us know which team you are supporting as we continue into the final slide. Yeah, there's not too many. Only 53 games this week. I think it might be one of the lowest weeks compared to like week 0, which is only like 4 games. But in general, I think it's one of the lowest counted games overall that are occurring on a weekend. But we get into the Nightcap game. Number one there to start off this slide is Oregon at Penn State. Third time we were talking about it on the stream. We went in depth. You can check that out in the beginning again, or check out the clips over on YT. We're going Oregon. They're not the favorites in the matchup. The sixth time they are meeting. Last year, Oregon got the job done in Indianapolis, sorry. And we're going to think they're going to continue the job against Penn State here on the road. There's just a lot going for the Ducks, and not a lot going for the Nittany Lions, to be quite honest with you. Alabama, Georgia, another massive game here in week 5. We're going with the home team for that one. 75th meeting between the two. Georgia and that run defense going to be getting the job done for us and securing that dub. UMass heads over to Columbia, Missouri to take on the Tigers. Tigers have been on a roll. They'll continue to be on a roll as they're minus 44.5 point favorites. We already said it in that top 25 section. Wouldn't be surprised if they cover that. An interesting one here. Washington State heading over to Colorado State. Interesting news for the Rams. They have moved on from Fowler Nicolosi, or is it Nicolosi Fowler? However, his two last names is in order. Not the starter anymore. I thought that was some pretty interesting news. Maybe that is going to be good enough. And also why the line is set at 4.5 point favorites for Colorado State. I just think Washington State is going to be able to come in, get the job done. They have not been, though, so good. They got kind of blown out a little bit in Seattle against the Huskies in the Apple Cup. They got blown out by North Texas. But I don't think they're obviously going to get blown out here. They shouldn't. It's going to suck if they do because they were picking them. But let's go Wazoo. We're going against the grain there, as Colorado State is the favorite. Another one where we're going against the grain. San Jose State versus Stanford. The Spartans, the last time they played the Cardinal, won. And if I'm not mistaken, Stanford should have been the favorite going into that game. Well, we're going to go the Spartans again. In winning this, Stanford is favored by 2 points. They got blown out by Virginia last week. They're going to come up against a very competitive San Jose State team. Stanford, not very good. That's why we're going again with the Spartans. Next up, we have Appalachian State heading over to Boise State. CFB home, a big content creator over on X, had a funny post. It's the battle of the non-state teams, or whatever you want to call it. I thought that was pretty funny because like neither of them are technically like a state in front of that. Regardless, you know, there's a reason why the room here is blue. So we're picking here from one of my programs that I heavily support. That's Boise. A little concerned because the line is set at minus 16.5 for the Broncos. Not that I don't think they're not going to cover. It's just the defense has not been good. And if they get exploited there, and kind of just not being as good as they should be, I can definitely see them not cover 16 points. But the offense seems all right. Seems like also Potter, the new offensive coordinator or full-time offensive coordinator, who was the co-OC last season, has kind of gotten his eggs in order and kind of, again, approaching through the ground, setting up some play action for Mad Dog Mattis to be successful. If that continues, then yeah, Boise State easily win this game. If they don't, and they for some reason try to pass it way too much, Appalachian State does definitely have a chance of not allowing Boise State to cover, but also maybe even sneaking a win there. But overall, let's go Boise for sure, as I'm a little pessimistic with that. South Carolina hosts Kentucky. There for some late night SEC action. Wildcats not favored. Gamecocks 6.5 points. is where that line is set. They should be getting the job done there. Kentucky, not very good. Their quarterback kind of sucks, to be quite honest with you. I don't know why they brought that guy in. It is what it is. Lenore Sellers should be bouncing back. And then getting into October to get ready to rename that month Cocktober, as I'll have some pretty interesting matchups there in the SEC. So let's again go South Carolina. Marshall heads down to UL Lafayette to take on the Raging Cajun. Yeah, I do not call them Louisiana. I will never call them Louisiana. There will forever be UL Lafayette. We are going with the Raging Cajun. This is probably one of the games I just don't want to pick because how bad both these teams are. We went with the Raging Cajun on the road. They should have beat Eastern Michigan. They lose by a field goal. Marshall, they played Missouri State. They lose to them. So both of these teams have been not so good with us when we pick them. So it's kind of like also that involved. The Raging Cajun are favored by also 1.5 points. So it's a slim margin is what is being expected. And I would just say, yeah, for sure, it's going to be a tight game. Let's go again, though, unfortunately, with the Raging Cajun at home. That's just one. Also, I'm not going to be surprised if I get it wrong because of how bad those teams are. Louisiana Tech heads over to El Paso, Texas to take on the Miners of UTEP. Bulldogs got the job done against Southern Mississippi last week. Proved us wrong. So let's not do that again. Go Louisiana Tech. UTEP, though, they have just not been playing or able to play 4 quarters. If they do, then yeah, Louisiana Tech doesn't look like maybe they'll win that game, but they've been playing solid enough. They've been playing close as well the last couple of seasons to, not doubt them as much as we should have last week. But yeah, let's go Bulldogs. They're 3.5 point favorites. It's another good reason of why we're picking Louisiana Tech. Final game on the slide is BYU heading over to Boulder, Colorado. Take on the Primetime Puffs. It's the last game of the day, which is kind of weird because usually it's like a Hawaii game. But Hawaii's on the road. They're also in Colorado. But for BYU, yeah, it's an easy pick. I think it's very disrespectful on that line being set at 6.5 points. Colorado hasn't kind of proven why that line is set at is where it is, or I think that's how it's supposed to come out of my mouth. Probably not. But yeah, Provo Cougs on the road. Their defense is going to have their way against Colorado for sure. And if they get set up their offense with that young quarterback Bear Bachmeier with some excellent field position, yeah, BYU fans are going to have a good time, a very good time. But again, 6.5 point favorites for BYU. I think it's a little bit, again, a slap in the face. Let's go again, BYU. And before we move on from the slide, if any of these teams is your team, hit that thumbs up button. Let us know which team it is. They're down in the comments down below. Bye teams. Here are the 32 bye teams again. So if you're like, why isn't Michigan playing? Well, they got a bye, guys. Why isn't UNLV playing? Well, they have a bye. So there you go.